It's Charter Local Edition. Brad Pomerance here in the Inland Empire, joined today by Nathan Miller, Vice President of the Riverside Community College District, active member of the California Republican Party, outgoing President of the Young Republicans of California. And we just saw the Republicans meet in Cleveland, the Democrats in Philadelphia. I want to get your honest assessment of the conventions. We know you're a Republican activist, but I'm sure you can give us an honest assessment.
I will do my best. All right, let's just start with the nature of this election cycle. If you're just looking at the candidates, you're talking about a lesser of two evils race.
Americans seem to be saying such.
Right. Clearly, each candidate is going to have their diehard supporters.
Right.
That goes without saying. But where does most of America stand? I think most of America would look at both candidates and say this is the best we can come up with.
And it is fascinating because they're both unique in their own way. You have Hillary Clinton being the first woman to be nominated by a major party. You have Donald Trump being someone who has never held elective office. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower didn't hold elective office, but he had been a general, etc.
And he did a few things.
A few things. And again, I'm not commenting one way or the other, but these are two very unique candidates in terms of the American experiment.
Right. Well, one clearly is running on what they would say is their business acumen.
Right.
The other individual's running on their record of service, and clearly there's a dynastic component to it.
And let's talk about the two conventions because, we both love politics. We admit it. I watched conventions when I was a kid. I'm sure you did as well. And the one thing I would say is Republican conventions always seem to be very rosy to me. They were always painting a picture of America being the greatest country on earth. Some people saw that as jingoistic. But it sold. It sold pretty well. And the Democrats tended to be a little more dour, and our best days are ahead of us. And but these two conventions, the parties flipped, or did they?
It's a mixed bag. I would say this election cycle is clearly virgin territory.
Right.
And when you have the lesser of two evils as your top-tier candidates, I'd say that tends to suppress the vote. Average rank-and-file folks, that morning or when they get their absentee ballot in the mail, if they forget, are they going to lose any sleep over it if they don't show up?
Messaging, though, because I've always felt that what the Republicans have done best, especially since Reagan,
I've had this conversation with folks, and but you've got to look. It starts with Hillary Clinton when you talk about messaging. Her position has to be continue the progress.
Stay the course.
You've got the arrow forward. What we've done is great. Let's keep doing what we've been doing. So if you're going to run against that, you've got to have an opposition contrast. And if our best, if maintaining the course is not the direction you want to go in, then where do you go with that? Clearly, where Trump is coming from is that we're in a more dangerous world now after 8 years of Obama.
And let's talk about that issue, the issue of terrorism, because there's no doubt that Mr. Trump, at least to my eyes, has been effective in tapping into American fears about safety, rightfully or wrongfully, whether it should be that way or not. He has done that effectively, and events speak to it.
I agree. I would say, I think his approach has been simplistic in his tapping into those fears, but the fact of the matter is that those fears are very real. And why is that? There's a lot of folks that argue that the destabilization of the Middle East began with George W. Bush.
Right.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Sure.
But once Bush is out of office, Barack Obama comes into office, it becomes his problem.
At a certain point, it's been 7.5 years.
And the argument, the more sophisticated argument is, has Obama handled that properly? Clearly, I would argue that his complete withdrawal of troops from Iraq has created a vacuum that created a widespread opportunity for ISIS to move in. I think you've seen an increasingly destabilized Middle East because our foreign policy from Barack Obama has been lackluster.
And whether you agree with that or not, Mr. Trump has made that argument effectively, which is undeniable.
Simplistically, but yes.
But effectively.
You don't...
I want to ask you, though, about another element of the Trump candidacy and compare it to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, a very wealthy man who got tarred by his wealth.
Because he allowed that to happen.
Okay.
He didn't own
Donald
who he
Trump,
was.
I mean, it's not my phrase, the blue-collar billionaire.
Again, from a simplistic, crass approach, and that has nothing to do with, with an agenda.
Right.
But his approach, I would argue, has been inarticulate and crass. Definitely not as sophisticated as we've been used to in the past from any presidential candidate.
Then let me ask you, because I can tell.
But here's the
Please.
contrast between
Please.
Donald Trump and a Mitt Romney approach, right? Mitt Romney ran. He clearly is wealthy. He's worked hard to make his wealth, and when he was attacked for his wealth, he cowered to it and said, "Oh, but I struggled when I started out." But that wasn't the argument. The argument that was being made there, by folks on the left was that your wealth is bad, that your wealth is a curse, and what you've done by becoming wealthy is subjugated others. But the American dream is that you can work hard and become successful, that this is a country that offers opportunity to anybody. You've got to start somewhere, and it takes time to get there.
But what's so interesting about Mr. Trump's effectiveness vis-a-vis what you're describing, if the election goes as it seems to be, regardless of who wins, we're seeing a realignment. I mean, the Democrats
undoubtedly
have always been very successful, well, decreasingly successful, but blue-collar whites have warmed to Democrats less over the years. Right now, the Democrats are completely upside down with blue-collar whites, whereas with white-collar Anglos, the Republicans had been doing smashingly well, and now the Democrats are seeing success there.
Well, I think what you're seeing with this election cycle in terms of the demographic breakdown of who's supporting who, Democrats are going to say, oh, it's the Republicans that are doing this by design, or it's the fault of their party. It's really the candidates, I think, that are driving it. But we are in the throes of a political realignment. I have argued that this has been going on for at least the past decade. Ever since George Bush Senior got run out of office, and people realized that actually he was not the same person as Ronald Reagan. It's been on the decline. The Soviet Union fell. That central theme that the coalition that was the Republican Party wrapped themselves around was gone, and everybody was trying to reassess what does that mean for our future place in the world?
It feels like the last 4 elections, 2 won by Republicans, 2 won by Democrats. Very similar breakdown. It's just the Republicans did a little better the first 2 times, the Democrats a little bit better the second 2 times in terms of the demography of support.
Well, I would say it's bigger than the California Republican Party. We're talking about a national realignment. So, but what's most important to get from that, when you're talking about a realignment, it's going to start with one party, but both parties are interconnected. Inevitably, it hits the Democrats in the long run.
He is Nathan Miller. I'm Brett Pomerance, Charter Local Edition.